G'day guys, back in 2020 I watched every single live-action Superman movie in the span of 1 week and ended up releasing a trilogy of reviews talking about the 3 worst depictions of Superman on the live-action cinematic screen. Those reviews included Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League. I thought I was done talking about that character, but at the end of every review, I always ask audiences to leave any films they want me to talk about in the comment section below. And I have had one user coming at me for a long time requesting I review today's movie. So, out of respect to the following I have, David Bosco652, today's review goes out to you.
Hey, that rhymes.
Ho, 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 ho. Delightfully devilish, Seymour.
If I go crazy, then will you still call me Superman?
Yes, everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, and today I'm going to be talking about the one Superman film directed by a pedophile and starring another pedophile. And be aware that I am going to take so many shots at the two of them for that because I consider that behavior fundamentally disgusting in every single way. Superman Returns, a 2006 superhero film directed by Bryan, the man who brought X-Men to the screen and helped catapult superhero movies into blockbuster movie franchises back in the early 2000s when they were lingering as a result of the many failures we saw in the 1990s. It stars Brandon Routh as the titular Superman, a man who was previously unknown and then failed to find any real mainstream success until he was cast as the Atom in the Arrow TV series in 2013. This movie came and went with little fanfare. It only grossed $391 million on a budget of $223 million, and plans for a sequel were scrapped largely as a result of that, later opting to have the character rebooted by Zack Snyder in what would become the short-lived DC Extended Universe. Now, people had been trying to bring Superman back to the live-action screen ever since the franchise crashed and burned with Superman 4, The Quest for Peace back in 1987, and it wasn't until Bryan proposed Superman Returns, which he made a direct sequel to Superman 2. Singer opted to direct this instead of X-Men The Last Stand, which would then instead go to Rush Hour director Brett Ratner, who, like Singer, has been cancelled for being a sexual predator. Jesus Christ, that's... You know, in 2006, we had 2 big superhero films being directed by sickos. What a year. I've seen Superman Returns thrice in my life. Once as a young child who had just discovered the Superman movies, and then once back in 2020 when I was watching all the movies in the span of 1 week. On both occasions, I never really thought much of it. I just thought the movie was long, slow, and lacked the genuine sense of fun that came from the first 4 Superman films, including the highly mediocre 3rd and 4th entries. When I watched it for this review, ugh.
All this exposition is wearing me out.
Superman Returns begins with the intro credits designed in the same style as the original Superman film, playing against the backdrop of the iconic Superman theme song. This kicks the movie off on a high note, which it never returns to, ironically for a movie called Superman Returns. Then we cut to the bedside of a dying rich woman that Lex Luther, now played by Kevin Spacey, has married.
Grand motherfucker, he's a grand motherfucker. He likes to fuck the grandmas.
In spite of your past, I know you're a good man, and all good men deserve a second chance.
If you only knew then what we knew about Kevin Spacey now.
Man's a diddler.
He fraudulently inherits her will.
You can keep that. The rest is mine.
That is definitely not the first time that Kevin Spacey has made a child scream in terror, and considering that he got let off by the courts, it probably won't be the last.
Prison is a creepy place, kitty. One needs to make creepy friends in order to survive.
Oh, that man is sick!
Do you know the story of Prometheus?
That movie sucked.
Prometheus was a god who stole the power of fire from the other gods and gave control of it to mortals.
And you stole innocence from children, particularly Anthony Rapp. I have to say allegedly for legal purposes, but I don't believe it was alleged. Lex Diddler goes to the Fortress of Solitude to steal kryptonite crystals, and we get another look at Marlon Brando as Jor-El, brought back through archive footage and modern visual effects techniques. This is a pretty spectacular touch. Giving audiences the chance to see more of Marlon Brando without needing to reanimate his face is one of the few things this film does right. But we still have an additional 140 minutes of the film getting everything else wrong to talk about.
Tell me everything, starting with crystals.
Okay, Heisenberg. Superman returns home, and we get a flashback to him learning to run super fast as a child. We really don't need to see a flashback of Superman discovering his powers though, considering that we've already seen it all before in the films that this movie is literally a sequel to.
Jump! You can jump!
That seemed unnecessary.
There's also one scene with Martha Kent that doesn't amount to anything. Superman Returns spends almost all of its runtime just talking, and rarely about anything interesting. Yet it never even really tries to take the time to delve into the mother-son relationship between these two characters, so that's just wasted potential. Kal-El casually returns to the Daily Planet, operating under the name Clark Kent, and learns that Lois has become engaged and given birth, as well as having written an article called Why the World Doesn't Need Superman. But I can give you two reasons why. Superman 3 and Superman 4. By the end of this film, I'll be able to give you a third reason why.
While you were doing your nails and ordering fur coats online, I was busy unlocking the secrets of one of the most advanced civilizations in the universe.
And by unlocking secrets, he means unlocking the belt buckles on the pants of innocent children.
Do not diddle kids, it's no good diddling kids.
But imagine cities, vehicles, weapons, entire continents, all grown.
Huh, I didn't think you liked them grown, Spacey.
I'm coming back. To work. Yeah. Well, you know, things change.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Superman Returns just keeps talking its way through the runtime without ever giving us a reason to care about what is being said or who is saying it.
Yes. If this launch is as pivotal as you claim, why is it only being covered by one news network?
Lady, shut up!
Wait for it.
I've already been waiting about 30 minutes so far.
I'm waiting.
By playing with Kryptonian crystals in the basement, Lex Diddler unleashes an electromagnetic pulse which shuts down every piece of technology on the East Coast. This causes a power malfunction on the plane and shuttle which is carrying Lois Lane, and of course this means that she nearly ends up in a plane crash on, coincidentally, the same day that Kal-El decided to return to Earth.
It's a coincidence. No, that's a big coincidence. That's what the coincidence is.
What the hell is that?
You know what it is, bitch.
Some kind of unidentified bogey coming in from the north.
Roger that.
And it's coming in fast.
Gotta go fast!
In a scene designed to capitalize on the post-9/11 fears of audiences, Superman flies in and desperately attempts to rescue the passengers of a plane destined to crash into the Earth. To its credit, this shows off some pretty spectacular visual effects, which do still hold up to this day. But while this scene is serviceable and mildly entertaining, it's the extended rescue scene which is beautiful but not exactly exciting. And of course, Superman manages to crash land the plane in the middle of a baseball field of all places.
Another happy landing.
My high school English teacher once told me that this was the point in the movie that he got up and walked out of the cinemas. If I didn't have to stick around to the end so that I could review this film, I really would have done the same.
Alright, I'm out of here.
Get her purse!
Superman Returns.
He said it! He said it!
The movie expects audiences to already care about the characters in the film, neither accounting for younger viewers who might not have seen the earlier films, nor trying to actually build a narrative that stands on its own 2 feet. Like every sequel, reboot, spin-off, and remake that studios insist on pumping out in the modern day, Superman Returns is a much earlier example of a product that thinks nostalgia is a valid substitute for substance and originality. Spoiler, it's not.
Hello.
Are you Wheezy Joe?
Clark, hey, welcome back.
Oh, Clark, good to see you again. How coincidental for you to come back on the very same day Superman Returns and I get into a plane crash. There's definitely no way you could have been involved with either of those things, right?
There are no small coincidences and big coincidences.
No, there are degrees of coincidence.
No.
The film continues to trudge through Lois Lane's personal life because you know how much superhero movie fans want to see Superman's ex-girlfriend raising a child with her new boyfriend, right?
Wrong.
Have you ever met someone? It's almost like you were from totally different worlds, but you showed such a strong connection that you knew you were destined to be with each other. And then you just takes off without explaining why or without even saying goodbye.
Oh God, don't care, don't care.
After all this chatter finishes, Superman flies into space to listen for trouble. I know Superman has super hearing, but considering that sound cannot travel without atmosphere, the science doesn't exactly stand up. But of course, he may still be in one of the atmospheres, and, you know, superhero films don't account for scientific accuracy, so... A robbery or something is in progress, or was in progress. The film just decided to cut to the end of it. After random baddie opens fire on the cops with a Gatling gun, Superman rocks up and deflects all the bullets. And since that definitely didn't work, surely a pistol will do the job, hey?
Nope!
Attention. The Metropolis...
Oh, okay, so after the film decides to cut to the tail end of a robbery, it then gives us this brief shot of Superman getting shot, and then just cuts the scene there. In what could have been the second action scene in the first 57 minutes of this movie, we instead just see the man get shot. And that's just it. Unfortunately, that is very sad foreshadowing for the kind of action we can expect from the rest of the movie. Lex Luthor's girlfriend ends up in a runaway car, which Superman then comes to stop before lifting her to safety, just as the film crosses the 1 hour mark.
My palpitations, they're gone. What did you do?
I didn't do anything.
You got that right. Call me Catherine.
And call me a taxi so I can catch it somewhere and watch a better movie. I watched The Expendables 4 last night, and that in almost every conceivable way was more entertaining than this one.
Every other paper in this town has got a female reporter, a good-looking female reporter, stashed on the roof covering Superman. And you two are the ones with the history.
Chief, I've done Superman. Covered him.
Yeah, right. Covered his Kryptonian cock with your Earth pussy. Bam! Everyone just keeps talking and talking and talking to the point that I honestly just got so uninvested that when this next scene started playing, the music distracted me. And the reason the music distracted me is because it made me think of a much better thing that I saw this song being used in.
Will there be anything else?
Oh, yes, my dear man. More beans.
That fake movie trailer had more entertainment value in its 1 minute of footage than this film does in its 154 minutes. Honestly, I wish that movie existed, and I wish Superman Returns didn't.
I bet he's 225 pounds, faster than a speeding bullet, draws his power from the sun.
You know, for a movie about a guy that's faster than a speeding bullet, this movie is slower than a quadriplegic bullet with flat tires.
Let's talk when I get back.
Let's not.
I know some people are asking a lot of questions now that I'm back.
Yeah, when's lunch?
Well, you're back. And everyone seems to be pretty happy about it.
So that was a fucking lie.
Not everyone.
Ain't that the truth?
The world doesn't need a savior. And neither do I.
You know what? Let's just watch some flashbacks.
I'm a fool to do your dirty work. Go, yeah. I don't want to do your dirty work no more.
She's just a liar, right?
The entire movie has been dull so far, but every scene between Lois and Superman proved to be amongst the most boring the film has to offer. Everything about Superman Returns is so emotionally flat, from the insubstantial writing to the director who is too focused on nostalgia to try something new.
Will you come with me?
Why?
So the film can recreate the famous flying love scene we saw in the first movie and in the fourth one. And that's literally what they do. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Next! After a few more useless scenes, Lois Lane goes to investigate Lex Luthor's movements and finds him on a boat. So now she's brought an innocent child onto a boat with a pedophile. And of course you can't say no on a boat.
Because of the implication.
And what is your name?
I'm not supposed to talk to strangers.
Cute kid and smart.
You sicken me.
Didn't you have a few more years to go on that double life sentence?
Yes, well, we can thank the Man of Steel for that. I mean, he's really good at swooping in and catching the bad guys, but he's not so hot at the little things, like Miranda rights, due process, making your court date.
Entertaining audiences.
No, I don't think we'll be turning around, Miss Lane, which means that we do have some time to kill.
Keep that child very close to you, Lois.
Not just an island, an entirely new continent. An extinct world, reborn on our own.
Why?
Why? 'Cause fuck 'em, that's why.
Kitty, what did my father used to say to me?
You're losing your hair?
Before that.
Get out.
Before that.
Stop molesting the neighbor's kid?
He said, you can print money, manufacture diamonds, and people are a dime a dozen, but they'll always need land. It's the one thing they're not making anymore of.
Thank you very much, Mr. Apostopoulos.
Cardinal George Pell outlines his plan to use the power of the Kryptonian crystals to create a new island made out of kryptonite, which will dominate the space formerly occupied by the United States.
Come on, let me hear you say it just once. Come on.
You're insane.
No! No.
No doesn't normally mean no to you, though, does it, Kevin Spacey?
Wow. You really are disgusting.
While we're waiting for more action to happen, here's a kid playing piano instead.
Guess who's back?
The pedo blasts a kryptonite missile into the water. Lois tries to send a fax for help. This thug dislikes it, so he attacks her, and then this happens.
Wow.
A piano?
He was Superman's son the whole time.
I just can't believe this.
Dad, keep your
You
voice down.
whore! Did you bang my wife? Huh?
Despite being the bastard son of a superhero, these goons easily throw him in a pantry.
Open this door! Open it!
You're just going to ignore the elephant in the room, and by elephant I mean your superpowered son who could probably bust open that door no problem?
Where's the boy?
Don't answer that.
At the 100-minute mark, Superman finally decides to come back and do something, nearly 40 minutes after the last action scene. Honestly, this movie is the superhero equivalent of The Matrix Reloaded. That movie was problematic because it had 40-minute long scenes of heavy expository dialogue, followed by some pretty amazing action scenes. The problem was that the pacing was off and the level of exposition was too heavy. But those dialogue scenes did actually propose some interesting concepts. As heavy on exposition as they were, they built concepts about the Matrix. They asked a lot of questions. Whereas in Superman Returns, all the time they're talking, it's just flat character attachments which have no substance. And then the action scenes that are finally delivered are way too brief and way too underwhelming. Sure, it's nice to look at, but really, who gives a shit?
Not me.
To its credit, this is the first action scene in the film to run for an extended period of time. And I say extended because every other so-called action scene has been so phenomenally brief by comparison that this is the Snyder cut of action scenes in this movie. In between it all, there's also a shot of Super Bastard walking towards the pantry door, seemingly about to open it with his super strength, but then...
Daddy!
Okay, let me explain everything wrong with this scene here. 1. Superman's son walking over towards the door plays out like some kind of mystery, as if we're about to discover he has some kind of power that we didn't already see when he literally yeeted a piano at that goon. 2, it was a bait and switch. We don't see any delivery of his powers because we just see Super Cuck showing up and opening the door for him. And 3, this is the end of this film even titillating at the idea that it might explore the idea of Superman's son.
But I ain't spending any time on it.
Yeah. That theme gets thrown out, just like Clark Kent's relationship with his mum, just like the potential for any action scenes, and just like any potential for entertainment value coming from Superman Returns. Yeah, it's all just forgotten about and wasted. But the movie has all the time in the world to waste our time on tedious romantic drama, which, as you know if you've watched this series, I am no fan of. By this point in the film, I actually could have finished watching Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and I would have had a way better time watching it. That film is a terrible movie, but it is an entertainingly terrible movie because it is just the right kind of bad. This is the wrong kind of bad. Boring and wasteful. The Isle of Kryptonite begins to expand, causing the boat to sink. Then the film decides to go all Titanic on us. Problem is, at this point, I'm actually just hoping the characters die so I don't have to hear them talk anymore, and so that maybe some drama will come from their death. But once again, Superman predictably shows up, rescues them, helps them fly off, and then heads to the island of Kryptonite, where he finds that his powers are drained upon landing. And admittedly, the set design does look pretty cool here. Everyone kicks the ever-loving shit out of Superman before Russell Brand stabs him with a solid piece of kryptonite and drops him into the ocean.
Richard, we have to turn around!
Turn the ship around!
With everything else in this film playing it so safe and predictable, we know there is no chance of Superman dying, but the film likes to pretend there is. Remarkably, he doesn't.
I have to go back.
You have to return, hey, Superman.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
With the film seemingly again taking influence from 9/11, Superman charges headfirst right into the support structure of the island and finds enough Earth core to separate him from the kryptonite. then literally yeeting the entire island into space. And this is the last thing close to an action scene you'll get from Superman Returns. No final showdown between him and Lex, just him once again tossing things into space like when he threw all the world's nuclear weapons into the sun in Superman 4. Drained of much of his energy, he collapses, crash lands on Earth, then becomes subject to the people standing together in the aftermath of a tragedy trope that September 11 introduced to the cinematic landscape. Predictably, he once again does not die. In fact, Superman returns. Again.
Oh! Bitch got me again, motherfucker!
And we knew it was going to happen, so none of the long sequences of people pretending Superman was about to die ever meant anything in the first place, and predictably, they lead up to a disappointing climax. And the film is still not done yet. Oh yeah, Lex Diddler runs out of fuel and ends up trapped on a small island. That's his fate, no final clash with Superman, just the implication that he's about to eat a dog.
Will we see you around?
I fucking hope not. He flies off, recreating the famous final shot from the classic Superman films, and finally it all comes to an end. Is Superman Returns a good movie?
No!
No. Like I said at the start of this review, I decided to talk about this movie at the insistence of David Bosco, because I have a very, very small following on YouTube of less than 300 subscribers, and I appreciate the support you guys have all given me. So when you want me to talk about films, I'm happy to talk about them. Next time, please, please, have me talk about films that are bad and not so fucking boring, okay? Superman Returns is hardly an actual superhero film. It's a love story parading around as a superhero film. And since childhood and throughout adulthood, I have never been a fan of love stories. They so frequently just drag down the narrative of films that should be doing other things. The love story subplots in White Chicks just padded the running time and took time away from the film being an outrageous comedy. The Lois Lane love story in the Snyder cut of Justice League just padded out an already 3.5-hour runtime into 4 hours and just completely dragged it down even further. I actually think if you cut all the Lois Lane footage as well as the dream sequences and a number of other things from that movie and made it a 3-hour film, you'd have a better movie. And in Superman Returns, it is pretty much the entire movie, which means I am sitting here disliking the entire movie the entire time. It's fair to argue that Superman 2, which I personally consider to be the best Superman film, is a love story, because the majority of that narrative revolves around Kal-El realizing his love for Lois Lane and deciding to sacrifice his powers to live a mortal life with her. The difference is that it had substance and heart in that movie. We got more emotional range out of both Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, and the movie touched upon the nature of a world without Superman more in a handful of scenes than Superman Returns does in its entire long-ass runtime. Also, that movie showed Kryptonian villains posing a legitimate threat to Earth as a narrative running parallel to the love story, giving the film higher stakes. Superman rescues a number of people throughout the film, but he also battles Zod, so the action is more diverse. And though the sense of humor in Superman 2 has been a subject of contention amongst audiences, I've always personally been a fan of it, partially because it encourages the movie to lean into its campy roots, and partially because it just gives the film flavor. A lighthearted touch of humor elevates it above the melodrama of a love story. Superman Returns is a long slog of unexplored themes, unsubstantial romantic drama, brief lackluster action scenes, and a plot which has too much admiration for the first two Superman films to try anything new. Sure, the idea of Lex Luther building an entire island out of kryptonite is an original concept, but it's a boring as hell one in this movie. It also just serves as the front for one scene where Superman is defeated way too easily, and another scene where Luther is then defeated way too easily. If you watch the original Superman films now, even with all their good traits, all the movies are objectively dated. Even with solid production values for the time and a real sense of charm, the movies are long, slow, and they really don't have the kind of action quantity one would expect from a superhero film. The only difference was, that was from a time when superhero films are not what they became in the 2000s, largely as a result of director Bryan Singer bringing the X-Men movies to the landscape, as well as thanks to the Blade movies and the Spider-Man movies. In the decade since then, audiences have had their expectations for blockbuster superhero films completely changed. So to take a modern-day superhero film and spend more than $200 million to try and make it mimic a film which is inherently outdated is little more than a waste of potential and resources. The original Superman film did come up short on action, but it focused its narrative on being a Superman origin story which saw his planet collapse, his arrival on Earth, and him growing into his powers before later becoming the titular hero, as well as depicting his burgeoning romance with Lois Lane. The origin story itself is way more entertaining than this 2.5-hour movie, which does little more than parade around in its nostalgia for that exact origin story. Bryan Diddler has himself said that if he were to make this film again, he would scrap it and just make his own origin story. But frankly, after seeing the original Superman movie get dated and see Man of Steel be the boring blockbuster that it was, I'm really just sick of seeing Superman's origin story depicted on screen. You know, it doesn't have to be an origin story, but it also shouldn't be Superman Returns. It should be some kind of third thing in the middle. I'll see what James Gunn does with Superman Legacy. Of all the movies to be reminded of watching Superman Returns, John Carter is one that came up, because that too was a film that cost more than $200 million and ended up telling a story which was so inherently outdated in every single way because it stayed way too true to its source material. Just like Superman Returns. John Carter stayed so true to the roots of a 1912 novel that all the media its source material had influence over would result in inevitable comparisons, while Superman Returns stays so true to a 1978 film that it fails to realize that audiences aren't in the 1970s anymore. Audiences looking for a modern superhero film probably aren't looking for 40 minutes of characters talking about uninteresting subjects followed by Superman showing up to rescue someone, then rinse and repeat over a period of 2.5 hours. We're gonna be looking for more action. That's what Daredevil got right when it made that very mediocre 2003 movie. It just tried to be a popular contemporary blockbuster. And whether you think it succeeded or failed, I would argue that for me, it was a guilty pleasure, because it was an entertaining generic blockbuster that actually had sufficient action spread out over its runtime. Superman Returns, it just doesn't have that. As for the cast in Superman Returns, all the actors are working with a completely mediocre script and some of the most limp direction Bryan Singer has ever delivered. All the dialogue is dry and depressing, and we see little talent on display from much of the cast. Brandon Routh looks perfect in the role, but he lacks the masculine bravado or natural charm of Christopher Reeves, so he makes for a pretty bland Superman. Lois Lane's story almost entirely revolves around her being a fiancée, an ex-girlfriend, a mother, and a damsel in distress, and Kate Bosworth fails to add any personality to the character that elevates her beyond those groundings. Her and Brandon Routh make for an exceedingly boring screen duo. Kevin Spacey makes for a pretty solid Lex Luthor, with his mad genius and genuine sense of evil giving Gene Hackman a run for his money, but without much interesting to say, he's a pretty boring screen presence much of the time. And Cal Penn has literally nothing to do the entire film, so why they bothered casting Kumar just goes beyond me. The only cast members I'll give straight objective praise to are that of Frank Langella, who brings a very natural grandiose presence to the role of Perry White, which makes him command the screen anytime he's on it, and Sam Huntington, whose natural likable energy and charm are a perfect fit for the role of Jimmy Olsen. As a final note, when I reviewed Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, I called it the single worst comic book film I had ever seen in my life, something I still maintain to this day. In comparison to Superman Returns, which is another terrible superhero film, I will say that BVS had way more ambition. It had better action, it tried to tackle more themes, it had a lot that it wanted to do, but it also exceeded its grasp. And as a result, the grim, downbeat nature and sheer amount of self-indulgent melodrama just made it a depressing, boring slog, which wasted the potential of a movie which was called Batman v Superman. Now, Superman Returns, on the other hand, was just downright boring. So, between a movie which made me feel disdain for the people who wasted my time, and a movie which bored the absolute shit out of me, I do have to say that I would rather be bored than left feeling bad at the end of a movie. And that is why I would argue it is better than BVS. Batman v Superman had more entertaining moments, but as a whole, it was a way worse experience to sit through than Superman Returns. Frankly, I wouldn't recommend either of them, but it's like choosing between the boring formula of Highlander 3 and the sheer contempt for fans and audiences that we saw in Highlander 2: The Quickening. Between choosing a film which is just dull and a film which is downright horrible, I'm going to choose dull any day of the week. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Highlander 2: The Quickening is the single worst movie ever made. And I never want to speak about that because I never want to rewatch it. Superman Returns gets 1 terrible character return out of 10, 2 lost in its reverence for the original Superman movies. It ends up being an overlong romantic drama bereft of action, substance, originality, or any real entertainment value whatsoever. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish, you guys. If there are any movies you want to see me discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. But please pick less boring movies. More aggressively bad movies, sure, I'd love to talk about those. Otherwise, until next time, I've been your host, Jukebox Harry. Peace.